What happens when science forgets its conscience, and human lives become disposable tools in the name of progress? In the frozen laboratories of Nazi Germany, experiments were conducted that still haunt the moral memory of modern science. These were not tests on willing volunteers or controlled simulations. They were cold, calculated trials performed on prisoners who had no choice, no protection, and no voice. The so-called freezing experiments were designed to answer a military question: how long can a human body survive extreme cold? Pilots shot down over icy seas, soldiers trapped on the Eastern Front. These scenarios became excuses for brutality. Prisoners were submerged in freezing water or exposed to subzero temperatures while doctors observed, measured, and recorded. The goal was data. The cost was human dignity. But this story is not only about cruelty, it is about how intelligence, authority, and ideology can combine to erase empathy. Highly trained physicians, people sworn to heal, crossed a line and justified it as duty to the state. Science, stripped of ethics, became a weapon. After the war, the world was forced to confront an uncomfortable question: can knowledge gained through suffering ever be justified? The answer reshaped modern medicine. From these crimes emerged strict ethical standards, informed consent, and international rules meant to ensure that research never again treats people as expendable. This video is not meant to shock for the sake of shock. It is meant to remember, to understand how easily necessary research can turn into atrocity when morality is silenced, and to remind us that every scientific breakthrough carries a responsibility, because without ethics, even knowledge can become a crime. Stay with us, because this is a story the world must never allow itself to forget. Some questions haunt the human story about our limits and what we'll do to survive. During one of history's darkest chapters, doctors at Dachau sought answers through unimaginable cruelty. The Dachau freezing experiments forced prisoners into ice water or exposed them to the winter air, all to see how long a person could survive the cold. The goal to study hypothermia's effects and test rewarming methods, driven by wartime needs as German pilots crashed into frigid seas, but the path chosen was one of inhumanity, where science lost its conscience. The subjects were prisoners, stripped of rights, dignity, and life, treated as disposable data points. Their suffering was meticulously recorded as they slipped toward death. This cold detachment is perhaps the most chilling aspect of this dark chapter. It's easy to see these events as distant, but the Dachau experiments warn us: science without empathy becomes monstrous. We must always ask, what moral lines must never be crossed, even in the name of survival? The answers aren't simple, but the question is essential. The story of Dachau is a warning from history. We must never stop asking where the line is, and never stop defending it. The Dachau freezing experiments were orchestrated by a team of Nazi doctors, led by Dr. Sigmund Rascher, a Luftwaffe physician and SS member. Rascher, eager to impress Nazi leaders, proposed these experiments as vital to the war effort. The setting was Dachau concentration camp near Munich, a place of immense suffering, providing a supply of prisoners deemed expendable. Victims included political prisoners, Jews, Roma, and others labeled enemies of the state. The experiments were hidden from most, but known to the SS who ran the camp. The official reason to help the Luftwaffe save pilots downed in icy waters. But beneath this was a dehumanizing ideology. Prisoners were seen as subhuman, their lives worthless. This belief enabled doctors to inflict suffering without remorse. The experiments weren't just about saving pilots. They reflected a worldview that treated human life as disposable. The line between science and atrocity was erased. Dachau became a symbol of what happens when medicine serves hate. The Dachau freezing experiments were systematic and brutal. Prisoners were submerged in ice water or left naked in freezing air, monitored as their bodies shut down. Electrodes tracked their vital signs. Doctors took notes as victims shivered, lost consciousness, and died, sometimes over hours. Others were strapped outside in winter, exposed until death, their suffering meticulously recorded. The agony didn't end with freezing. Dr. Rasher tested rewarming methods, from sun lamps that burned skin to scalding water baths, often fatal. In a final indignity, some victims were rewarmed by being placed between naked women, forced to use their body heat. This animal warmth was documented with chilling detachment. Of the 6,400 prisoners subjected to these experiments, at least 90 died directly from them. The rest endured trauma that defies description. These acts were not science, they were torture. The suffering was the point, not the data. The legacy is one of cruelty, not discovery. Dachau's experiments remain a testament to the depths of human inhumanity. The stated goal was to gather data to save German pilots from hypothermia. Researchers wanted to know, how long could someone survive in freezing water? What was the best way to revive them? Dr. Rasher and his team tested various rewarming techniques, hoping to create a standard rescue procedure. But ambition and a desire for prestige also drove the research. Rasher saw this as his path to fame. Prisoners became mere stepping stones for his career. The experiments reduced human life to numbers: temperature, heart rate, time, ignoring the suffering behind the data. The researchers believed the end justified the means, but in their quest for certainty, they lost sight of humanity. The pursuit of knowledge became an excuse for cruelty. Dachau's legacy is a warning. Science must never lose its soul. The Dachau freezing experiments are a case study in ethical collapse. There was no consent. Prisoners were forced into torture, stripped of autonomy. The experiments violated the core medical principle: do no harm. Doctors became agents of suffering, not healing. Victims were chosen for their vulnerability, targeted because the Nazis saw them as less than human. Risks and pain were inflicted on one group, while another reaped any potential benefit. The cruelty was extreme and unnecessary. Pain was not minimized. Comfort never offered. The suffering served no scientific purpose. These acts reveal the moral corruption of those involved. Dachau stands as a warning. Without ethics, medicine becomes a weapon. The lessons are written in the suffering of its victims. After the war, the Dachau data posed a dilemma. Should knowledge gained through atrocity be used? Some argued using it would honor the victims. Others said it would legitimize the crimes. The Alexander report found the data of limited value. Some observations about hypothermia and rewarming, but the research was deeply flawed. Rasher's methods were inconsistent, his notes unreliable, and many findings fabricated. Prisoners' poor health further skewed results. Most modern scientists reject the data as unusable. The suffering produced almost no trustworthy knowledge. Today, our understanding of hypothermia comes from ethical research with volunteers and real-world cases. Effective treatments are now based on consent and compassion. Dachau proved that ethical science is the only science worth pursuing. The cost of knowledge must never be human dignity. The Dachau experiments are universally condemned, a symbol of medical abuse and the dangers of science without ethics. They're not studied for their findings, but as a warning to future generations. The consensus, data from such atrocities, should not be used or cited. To do so would dishonor victims and risk encouraging future abuses. The refusal to use this data is a moral stand. The legacy of Dachau shaped strict international codes for human research. Informed consent, risk-benefit analysis, and respect for subjects are now mandatory. Every clinical trial is overseen by ethics boards, a direct result of these horrors. The story is a reminder: education and status don't guarantee morality. Vigilance is always required to keep science humane. The lesson: knowledge must serve humanity, never harm it. After World War II, the world confronted Nazi atrocities in the Nuremberg doctors' trial. 23 physicians were prosecuted for war crimes. Dachau's experiments were key evidence. 16 were found guilty, 7 sentenced to death. Dr. Rascher was executed at Dachau before the war's end. A grim twist of fate. The most enduring outcome was the Nuremberg Code, a set of principles for ethical medical research. Its first point: voluntary consent is absolutely essential. The code demanded necessity, prior animal research, and avoidance of unnecessary suffering. No experiment should risk death or disabling injury without reason. These rules became the foundation for all future research ethics. The Nuremberg Code was born from the ashes of Dachau. It stands as a moral law for all science. The Dachau freezing experiments are not a story of discovery but of moral failure. The victims were not martyrs for science. They were casualties of cruelty and hate. Their suffering produced no breakthroughs, only a legacy of pain and a warning for the future. The Nuremberg Code and later regulations are the world's response to these horrors. These rules are not obstacles. They are the guardrails that keep science ethical. They protect the rights and dignity of all research subjects. Remembering Dachau is about illuminating the path forward. It reminds us that how we seek answers matters as much as the answers themselves. The pursuit of knowledge must always respect human life. Evil can wear a lab coat and carry a clipboard. Our defense is a shared commitment to ethical principles. The memory of Dachau's victims demands vigilance. Science must always be a force for healing, never again a tool of torture.